each one fueled by hot, dry, and windy conditions. The most dramatic example is the Deer Creek fire south of Moab, which erupted last week and has already burned over 15,000 acres. Over the weekend, this fire even produced a rare and dangerous firenado, a fire whirl strong enough to flip heavy equipment, rip roofs off, and spread flames unpredictably. As of today, that fire is just 7% contained and remains active. On Sunday, the Monroe Canyon fire in Sevier County started, and it's quickly grown to 8,646 acres. Evacuations remain in effect for the area, along with Fish Lake National Forest issuing closures. It was human-caused and is currently 0% contained. In the south, the Forsyth fire near St. George began with a lightning strike on June 19th, and it quickly exploded in size, destroying 13 homes in Pine Valley and burning almost 16,000 acres. It is now 83% contained. Near Bryce Canyon, the France Canyon fire has burned nearly 35,000 acres and is now 90% contained. Like Forsyth, it was sparked by lightning. We are heartbroken for those who have lost homes and livelihoods, and we're grateful, profoundly grateful, that no lives have been lost. To our firefighters, our first responders, and community leaders, thank you for your incredible efforts under very difficult conditions. The fire season is already shaping up to be one of the most active in recent memory. While the number of wildfires this year is similar to last year, 571 versus 576, the conditions on the ground are worse and fires are behaving very differently. Last year, we had more moisture on the landscape, which helped moderate fire behavior despite a similar number of statistics. This year, we don't have that same buffer. 2 consecutive years of healthy snowpack have triggered the growth of grasses and brush that have now dried out and are fueling these wildfires. The tinder-dry landscape means every spark has a greater chance of becoming a large and fast-moving wildfire. Even more troubling, 72% of these wildfires were human-caused. That's something that we can prevent. Lightning is out of control, but dragging trailer chains, abandoned campfires, and target shooting in dry brush are not. So once again, please, please, please be vigilant. Use your fire sense, which is really just common sense, and stay clear of active fire zones so our teams can do their jobs. I want to give a quick update on drought conditions. Well, we're definitely focused on fire. Sadly, we are seeing an uptick in water use. Reservoir levels have dropped 10% between June 1st and July 1st. That's about 5 times more than normal for this same period. Overall, our reservoirs are at 77% of capacity. That's still slightly above average for this time of year, but they're being depleted at an above average rate, so we expect that rate to drop. It's 12% lower than at this time last year, and 100% of the state is now in moderate to severe drought. I will just also note that a couple things have happened that are really interesting here. We had a better winter in northern Utah than we had in southern Utah, but we've had more rain in southern Utah than we've had in northern Utah. So for example, Box Elder just reported the lowest precipitation on record from April to June. So northern Utah is seeing less of the monsoonal moisture than anywhere else, which means that it's bad all across the state. Fortunately, because of our past good winters, we've been able to build up some storage, but that buffer's quickly eroding, and we just encourage people to please, please, please use less water. It's okay to have yellow lawns this year. We give you permission not to keep them up and keep them green. At the end of June, I issued a proclamation declaring a statewide day of prayer and fasting for rain. We need more than just good policy. We need hope, and from every corner of our state. Whether you share that belief or not, the message is clear. We all have a role to play in conserving water. And so while we need faith and prayers, we also need people to cut back on their usage. We're matching faith with action. There are water-saving incentives and rebates available, and a weekly county-specific lawn watering guide at slowtheflow.org. I would encourage everyone to visit slowtheflow.org to learn more about how you too can cut back on water usage. Please take advantage of these water-saving tools. Every gallon saved really does make a difference. And I would also, just back on wildfires, encourage everyone to visit utahfireinfo.gov for more information on how to prevent wildfires. With that, I'm happy to open up for any questions.
Making any more drought-related emergency declarations for agriculture or for any other sectors of our industries?
So everything that we've done so far is what is needed. We don't see any need for additional emergency declarations right now. Again, we'll continue to monitor, continue to work with the legislature on any issues that do come up. For agriculture producers who have been impacted by fire, there are some federal grants available being administered through the Utah Department of Agriculture and Food. So we'll be working with our ag producers in that sense as well. Right now, agriculture is cutting back significantly, and they'll have the biggest cuts because of the dire water situation.
More the state.
Go, Lindsay.
Oh, just how much of our wildfire issues right now would you blame on mismanagement of forest lands?
Yeah, so a significant part of it comes from mismanagement and just lack of management of those lands. Those on these mountainsides, well, I'll give you an example. So Forsyth, in one area, you could tell where we had treated lands. There was a major reduction in fuels in those areas where fuels had been treated over the past 10 years versus the places where they had not been treated. A very stark difference, both in the ability, in the damage that was done and the ability to protect home and property and lives from the fire damage. The good news is that we are doing more, and I want to give credit to both the Trump administration and the Biden administration who realized years ago that we needed to do more. Ending the roadless rule will have a huge impact in a positive way in allowing us to get to those areas that where we've had the most undergrowth, the beetle kill that we haven't been able to do anything with that are causing these extreme fire behaviors. And so it absolutely plays a role. Bad decisions over the past 30 or 40 years have led to these catastrophic wildfires. It's not the only reason. There are others as well, and climate change is part of that for sure. But with whether you believe the climate is changing because it's human caused or not, it is changing, and we've got to adapt to that. And so one of the ways we adapt to that is by treating more of our forests. And Utah's really leading the nation. It's fun to see states like California and Oregon following Utah's lead, and we're here to help. So we'll get more of that done in the future, please.
Governor, is there more the state or local governments need to do to protect homes or other structures from being destroyed in the fires we've seen?
Yeah, there's more that homeowners need to do for sure, and this is always the debate. We for the past about 12, 13 years, we've had a program we call the WUI, the Wildland Urban Interface. And it's a program to help homeowners add protected space around their cabins, around their homes, around their properties. In places where they've done that, where they've cut back the brush, where they've added defensible space, we can get in there and we can save their properties. Our incredible firefighters will do anything possible except put themselves in the type of danger that take their lives to save property. And the problem is everybody wants their home or their cabin in the mountains, and they want trees right around it because that's cool, right? It looks great, it feels great, and it's the worst possible thing that can happen. And so I can go out and show you countless examples of private property where you have two identical homes, one where they cut back the trees around the home, and one where they let the trees grow up right next to the home, and we can save one and not save the other.
Governor, different topic. With the pending execution of Ralph Menzies, you have reportedly in the past had some reflection on the death penalty. Where are you on the death penalty now? Should the death penalty be repealed, and why or why not?
Yeah, so these are very, very hard situations. This will be the second during my term as governor. We hadn't had one for about 12. Well, I guess it was 2010 maybe was the last one before I was governor, and they're very difficult. I'll just be perfectly honest. This is one I struggle with. I'm very cautious about the power of the state, especially the power of the state to put people to death, the ultimate penalty. And I don't believe that governments are infallible. I think governments make mistake, and I think the worst mistake we could ever make is to put someone to death who was perhaps innocent. In this case, in the case before this one, it's very clear that they were not innocent. There's no real debate over that. And as you talk to those who suffered and the heinous nature of these crimes, I believe that there probably are circumstances where it is still warranted, and so it's a close call for me, but I'm supportive of the decisions that were made that have led to, in these two cases.
You do not favor repeal. You still think
it
has a place in law.
I think it does, but again, I think it should be very, 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 very rare. Yeah.
Do you have more options? Should you have more legal options on staying or commuting?
Yeah, it's interesting. We're one of the only states where one of a very few states where the governor does not have any ability to pardon or commute sentences at all. I can tell you it's a relief. Selfishly, it's a relief to not have that power. It's nice not to have people, coming and begging for me to be able to make those decisions. But there is a reason that most states do have that power. There's a reason the President of the United States, although I believe it's been abused by every president in recent memory. And so I think it's a mistake to allow unfettered discretion, and it can lead to abuse and favors being done. And I don't like that either. But there probably are some circumstances where it would have been nice to have the ability to do something like that.
A topic there. What's your reaction to Mayor Mendenhall's comments yesterday about the public safety plan, where she said, "We cannot keep doing this alone. This crisis demands sustainable long-term funding from the state to meet the scale of this challenge"?
Yeah. Well, I want to commend Mayor Mendenhall and her team, Chief Red, for the incredible work that they put forward over the past few months. We are seeing a difference. We're seeing crime rates declining. We are seeing a greater enforcement and protection, places like the Jordan River Trail, where they've spent an enormous amount of time. We're seeing in some of our parks, it's still a little hit and miss. It is getting better. We're seeing families start to come back to some of those parks. Still a lot of work to be done. I would only say that they are not doing it alone. The state is spending more now than ever before in the history of the state, more than the first 100 years combined in our state, in helping cities and counties with homelessness, with addiction, with housing. And yet she's also right that we need to do more. There's no question about that. We've been very clear with that. We continue to work with our legislative partners to make that happen, to try to prioritize those funds. I do think there will be more of a willingness to prioritize funds as they see real action happening in the city, where we see changes being made in the city, where we see enforcement actually happening. And so it does take all of us working together. I'm more optimistic now than I've been in a long time that we'll get there over the next couple of years, working with the homelessness board, again, working with the city, with the DA, really prioritizing those who are causing the most harm and the most damage, and taking back our streets and parks. And so with an ability to do that, we'll be, I hope the legislature will be more willing to invest in treatment and jail beds and the types of things that we need to make this happen. So shelter options as well. Absolutely, shelter options. Yeah, we're still working on a plan to expand shelter beds in the county and across the state. Again, looking at a campus model and what that might look like, so that we can help get the resources in one spot and get people the help they need. And those who don't want help will have to go somewhere else or go to jail. That they'll have that choice to make. So,
what safeguards are in place to ensure that the 287G program doesn't lead to racial profiling or discrimination against Latinos in Utah?
Yeah. Thank you. We have a good working relationship with our 287G partners, and it's we've always made it clear that we have to follow the law and the Constitution, and racially profiling is not acceptable in our state, never will be, and we preach that and we enforce that, and we will continue to do so. This really is about, again, enforcing the law and doing it in a way that protects citizens here in the state, trying to get the worst offenders off the streets. We're working with our sheriffs to do that. I appreciate. I know there was a lot of discussion in Utah County yesterday. I appreciate the Utah County Sheriff for his words about what this means and what it doesn't mean. I know there's a lot of fear out there and a lot of misinformation, and we want to do everything we can to help people understand that we will do this the right way. So, Lindsay.
What does it mean, though? What does the 287G agreement mean? Can you explain it to Utahns? Because everyone who spoke yesterday was against the agreement.
Sure.
And there really is a fear out there that increased raids could happen. Now, we heard the sheriff say that's not going to happen in Utah County, but what assurances can you give people? Because people largely were saying, well, we may be hearing you and trusting you, but we don't necessarily trust ICE.
Sure. Well, we don't control ICE. We don't. I have no control over ICE, and these agreements don't give us any control over ICE. What these agreements do allow us to do is to help with processing, to help when asked, and again under the discretion of the local sheriffs. And so that's I think people can rest assured, hearing from the sheriff, that's the direction that those are going to go. Look, we have so much law enforcement work to do in this state, and I can tell you our connection with ICE and the state connection. We signed an agreement, a very similar agreement, a couple months ago, I think it was, with corrections to be able to process. What happens is we arrest people who commit crimes. We put them into our jails and into our prison, and then when their sentence is up, they're going to be released, and when they should be deported. What this agreement for the state allows us to do is to go through that process within the jail system to make sure that they're not released back onto the street where they can commit more crimes, but they actually are deported. And
happening already.
It has been happening already. We didn't have a formal agreement to make it happen. We were doing pieces of it, but we should have had an agreement long ago to make this happen. Most states have done that, not just red states. There were blue states who have had these agreements in the past as well, going back to other administrations. And so this is something that we should have done. We just wanted to formalize it to make sure that we were doing it the right way.
Planning to do something similar to Florida, like building maybe like alligator Alcatraz?
We don't have, we haven't had any requests to do so, and we don't have any plans to do that right now. No.
I have a question for you about the president's budget bill.
Sure.
Under the changes to the Medicaid and the ACA programs, there's an estimate that 188,000 Utahns could lose access to their health coverage. Is there anything that you think the state can or should do to step in and address those losses? Yeah,
we'll be working with the legislature to look very closely at what that means. Again, many of those cuts are going to be implemented later under the terms of the bill, and so I think everybody's trying to figure out what that means and what the impact is ultimately going to be. We'll be implementing a work requirement, something that we had petitioned back years and years ago, something that President Obama actually told us he supported at one point, and so we keep working through those types of issues. I don't know what the actual number is going to be right now. We're working with our Department of Health and Human Services to try to figure out what that looks like, and of course, helping people get onto private insurance is going to be really important. Making sure that we're implementing the law faithfully and that we have the funding necessary to impact people. We end up paying for this one way or another. If people end up if they don't have health care coverage and they end up going to the emergency room, which is where you get the most expensive care, all that does is raise rates for everybody else in the state. And so we'll look at programs. We've done some interesting things in the past to help people who are struggling with their health care, and we'll look back at those programs to see if there's a way to implement more in the future.
What about SNAP as well?
Yeah, SNAP again, another one that we'll be looking very closely at, and what those impacts will be. It may mean we end up funding more from the state level as our budgets allow us to do that.
But do you have a sense of the fiscal impact?
Not yet. We don't have those numbers yet, but we're continuing to look through them. And I'm going to be I'm going to be really blunt. Look, these pay-fors in some of these bills, we've seen this before. We saw this under President Obama, where they pass a bill and they're going to pay for it with cuts in the future, and then those cuts never happen because the Congress ends up feeling the heat, and then they change the law a year later to prevent that from happening. So I'm a little dubious that those pay-fors will all come through. But we'll see.
I know you had also pushed back against the AI provision that ultimately came out of the bill. What are your thoughts on the state's ability to continue regulating AI? What would you like to see? And what are your thoughts on data centers coming to the state?
Yeah, so the AI infrastructure set right now is very fascinating. I'm a big believer in that there is an AI arms race happening right now between China, Russia, the United States, and we have to win that. It's imperative that we win that, and so we do have to make sure we're investing in infrastructure. It means we need to significantly increase our energy production in this country so that we can keep up in that arms race, and so we're doing that. So I believe in that. I believe that we should not be regulating the innovation that is happening around AI. I also believe that we should be regulating the implementation of the tools that come out of AI to protect our citizens. So I know it may sound a little counterintuitive, but I don't think it is. I think you can support both things. You can support the development of AI and also be very cautious about the way that AI impacts people in their daily lives. And so it's one thing to support it for national security purposes, and another thing to say that I'm extremely worried. I will tell you, I used to be a tech optimist. I can tell you that in the early 2000s, I felt that the advent of the internet was going to help us globally to get to know each other better. I thought it would. We saw in the Arab Spring how the internet was used to help countries get rid of authoritarian regimes and to help the spread of democracy across the globe. I was very excited about the advent of social media that would allow us to connect with people and friends and get to know people who were different than us and bring us all together. Didn't work out the way I thought it was going to work out. In fact, I think social media has been a scourge to our, while there are some good parts of it, it's certainly had a debilitating impact on our young people. I believe it's the major cause of anxiety, depression, and suicide rates, and it's been incredibly divisive for our country. I think it's certainly led to the polarization that we're seeing now. It's led directly to assassination attempts on, and not just attempts now, as we saw sadly in Minnesota. I believe AI is going to make that 1,000 times worse, and so that's why we push so hard in that bill to allow the states to maintain the ability. And Utah is being recognized worldwide for our AI regulation. It's unique. There's nothing else like it. It's being a model. We just a couple months ago met with some AI thought leaders in Canada that are looking at our model and how to implement that in other countries across the world. But this idea that we allow companies to work very closely with the regulators to figure out how the most dangerous uses of AI. So we started with AI in the mental health and therapy space, working closely with companies to put some guardrails around that. We think it could be a huge addition. It could be really helpful. We don't have enough therapists available for people who need help, and so if AI can be a substitute there to help people with their mental health, that's great. But it could also do the exact opposite, right? It could exacerbate the problems, and we've seen AI do that, encourage people to take their own lives. And so that's where it's just so critical that we are allowed to help put some guardrails around it, so it can give us the best of a world where we're solving the world's greatest problems using artificial intelligence, but not causing more problems.
So if social media is a scourge, I want to know then, how do you handle it with your own? You tweet frequently.
I do.
You post on social media. So
Yeah.
how do you strike this balance if it's so bad?
Yeah, it's because it's not all bad. There are good parts of social media that do allow us to connect, that do allow us to share information. And so I try very hard, Ben, to do it in the right way. You'll see I actually post less than I used to. I'll share some things that I think are valuable or things that impacted me. I stay out of the comments for the most part because it's just so toxic out there. And some of those aren't real people. Some of those are adversaries for sure. Adversarial nations like Russia and China who've learned that the easiest way to destroy the United States is to help us destroy ourselves. And so they're adding to that toxicity that is out there. And then I try to set a good example. I try not to be bombastic. I try not to be a bomb thrower. I try not to attack other people and tear other people down, even when I disagree with them. And I don't always get it right. Everybody can point to examples where I've gotten it wrong. But because it has such a hold on us, I don't think. I wish we could all just log off and be done, but I think we can continue to work together, and we hopefully need some good examples on there, and some of you are those good examples, and I want to thank you for that. So
that's all the time we have for the television portion of our broadcast. We want to thank you for joining us for the Governor's Monthly News Conference. And Governor, actually, I have a question.
And I'll get to you, Brian, I promise.
Early this morning, the U.S. Senate approved a rescission request from the Trump administration to cut all federal funding for public broadcasting. What response do you have for the impact that this could have on Utahns, especially in rural areas?
Sure. So I share some of the concerns that others do about the partisanship that has infiltrated some of public broadcasting, NPR and others, and so I think that should not happen. We should not be using taxpayer dollars for a forum for partisanship. And I also worry about the impacts that will have on safety, security, broadcasting in our local areas. There, as somebody who lives in rural Utah, I think about our tribal nations as well. These are resources that are really important. And I will say one of the things I'm most worried about is that these cuts actually won't help or won't do what some members of Congress think it will do, in that it will PBS and NPR will still go on probably doing what they do, but the locals like PBS Utah, who are doing great things and great programs like this, which I hope adds some value, these are the things that are going to be cut. These are the things that will fall away. And so while I agree with the idea and the principle, I worry that the unintended consequence will be the exact opposite, that we'll still have a hyper-partisan NPR and we'll just lose the good things that are actually necessary for our tribal people, for our rural communities, and for our ability to have important programming like this. Brian?
The Trump administration released the $6.8 billion to schools, K-12, which likely results in millions, if not tens of millions of dollars for Utah.
In what? I'm sorry. In what venue?
There was a Senate vote. Both Utah Senators Curtis and Lee voting apparently with this measure that the Education Department has withheld this money, is my understanding.
Was this money that was not spent during the COVID era that was pulled back?
Maybe.
Okay. So,
yeah.
well. Regardless, again, we're working very closely with our federal partners. I know that we've had some monies that were not spent that were being retained by the federal government, and I think fiscal responsibility is really important at the federal level. We have to be more careful. We're spending wildly. I've said this for years. Every president's budgets are too high. We have a real fiscal crisis in our country that's continuing to grow, and so we definitely support thoughtful pullbacks when it comes to spending. I'm more interested in getting the federal government out of policymaking at the education level. I've been very clear about that. I've supported getting rid of the Department of Education. I think it's completely unnecessary and is not adding anything to. So that's where I would like to see the cuts come from. Is cuts that come from the growth in the Department of Education. when we should use those dollars at the state level.
Governor, what is your opinion on Attorney General Derek Brown pursuing a federal case in the public lands issue? Right now, SUA is suing the state, saying we don't actually have the right to these unappropriated lands because we gave up that right at statehood. What is your opinion on all of that? And where should the case go?
Yeah, so my opinion is very clear that the SUA is wrong. And they also released a bizarre press release that made no sense. I have no idea what they're talking about. Just fundraising, the usual sue, settle, fundraise off of it and lie to the public. We're very supportive of. We're looking at every option available to us as a state. We have been hamstrung. Democrats, starting in the 70s in this state, were fighting the first sagebrush rebellion. We feel very strongly as a state that that's not what we agreed to at statehood. In fact, it's very clear. The disposal of the lands was what we agreed to, and Congress has not kept their end of that bargain. We want to protect these lands. We've talked about the fire danger on lands, much worse on federal lands and on state lands. Our ability our ability to control what happens on these lands, protect these lands, is much higher than anything that the federal government has done. And now that, again, we have a federal government, we had until this administration, a federal government that continued to close access to these lands that are supposed to be for the benefit of the public. And so sadly, the federal government has never kept up their end of the bargain when it comes to federal lands. They've only made it worse, and we believe that the state would do a much better job of that. So we'll continue to work very closely with the Attorney General in making those decisions, and would support a lawsuit going forward.
Okay, but no answer on whether you will file that case.
We're looking at all options right now. Yeah.
Who owns TikTok to you?
Do we have enough FEMA support right now during our fire season?
Well, we're working very closely with FEMA. So far they've approved all of the FMAGs that we've asked for. So that's the reimbursement that comes for the firefighting on federal lands and to help cover the cost of fighting those fires. Very expensive. I mean, the Forsyth fire. Some of these fires will be $1 million a day fires once you have those heavy air tankers out there. But the response has been great. Within 24 hours of putting in our request, we've received a positive response in all of those requests. Right?
You announced GRIT at the beginning of May, and you gave state agencies a deadline to give an efficiency improvement by July 1st. Did the state agencies do that? And what are some of the ideas that are out there?
Yeah, we'll be sharing those soon. We've compiled all of them. We're going through those and trying to rank them and coordinate who's going first, what it's going to take to see these reductions. But the response has been overwhelmingly positive, and I will share those. We're not ready to share those today, but in the coming weeks and months, we'll be sharing more and more of those efficiency initiatives.
Cost savings.
Yes,
here?
Yes, there will be real cost savings, and there will be some cost increases as well. And that's that's the difference between what we are asking for is better public service. And so we're looking at the data, we're looking at how we can help. Improving efficiencies isn't always about cost cutting, although it is a lot about cost cutting, and that's an imperative. We will have lots of cost cutting. We got made fun of because we announced a cost cut of $30,000. You can make fun of me for that all day long because $30,000 matters. I know it's not a big number, it's not a flashy number, but we are looking at those types of numbers. But also we're looking at how we can provide better service, how we can cut wait times. That matters to me. Sometimes you have to spend a little more. I would rather spend a little more in one area and have a 5-minute wait time or a 24-hour wait time than have a 30-day or a 6-month wait time to get a permit. So those are other things that we're looking at when it comes to efficiency. It's not just about money, it's also about time and the satisfaction of our customers, which are the taxpayers of the state of Utah.
Double back on the public broadcasting spending cuts. Senator Lee has been a primary backer of that bill. Have you had any conversation with him about it and your concerns about the hit to local broadcast?
No.
Do you want to?
Look, our people talk to each other. I haven't had direct conversations with him, but we will certainly have those conversations. And again, I understand what's happening. I understand why they're doing it, but we're also looking at, okay, if this bill passes, then and I know this. I can't remember if it was North Dakota or South Dakota, but one of the senators was looking at could we fix the problem I'm worried about with local grants to local institutions, and if we could do something like that. So we'll continue to work with both Senator Lee and Senator Curtis on those issues.
What did you think of Senator Lee's tweets about the Minnesota shootings?
I thought they were awful.
Governor, back to immigration. Do you support bipartisan efforts in Congress to create some exceptions to Trump's deportation policies that would exempt some immigrant workers, one specifically for certain industries who arrived before 2021?
So what I believe we need to do is fix immigration policy. And honestly, I believe President Trump might be the only president in my lifetime that could actually do that. Well, I guess since President Reagan, when we had the last real immigration reform. I've talked to the president. I've talked to Secretary Rollins about the need to secure the border first, which he's done, which is incredible. Which is why we have this really rare opportunity right now, I think, for some bipartisan work to solve the immigration issue. The president understands that there are certain industries where this is very important. Agriculture is one of those, and I can tell you from our ag producers that really matters. I'd floated years ago an idea of allowing states to determine the number of visas so that every state would be different. I still support something like that. I would love the federal government to give us that opportunity and that authority. But barring that, President Trump has also said multiple times that it's important that we keep people here who come to our universities and get degrees here, the best and brightest. I think it's incredibly foolish of us to export our one of our greatest assets, which is our institutions of higher learning in this state. We bring people here, we educate them, and they want to stay here and help build our economy, and then we send them off. And I know the president agrees with me on that. So I do think there are some areas of agreement, some areas of compromise where we could actually fix a very, very broken system, make it more transparent, make sure that taxes are being paid, and that companies and others who are short on workforce can bring in the immigrants that they need to help with that with agriculture and other industries.
What do you make of, though, how it's been rolling out by ICE? You see these raids, you see the concerns that communities have. How do you think this is being handled? Well,
I can tell you here in the state of Utah, it's been handled very well. I can't speak directly to what's happened in other states. It's hard to know what's real and what's not sometimes, even for me. A great example of that is we had this mass social media event that showed an ICE raid happening here in the state of Utah that was not an ICE raid at all. And so certainly I think it hasn't been flawless. I think there's been some mistakes made, and it was always going to be bumpy. But I would just point out that again that if not for the terrible mishandling of immigration policy by the previous administration, we would not be having to deal with this. I just can't underscore enough how awful it was, the Biden administration allowing millions of undocumented immigrants, some of them with very nefarious purposes, and this has been well documented, pouring across the southern border with no friction whatsoever, and then always the excuse that there was nothing they could do about it. It turns out that that's been proven completely false, and that they could have stopped that from happening and not overloaded our system. And this is what has led to those who are the most supportive in our state of refugees and immigrants. When you overload the system, you lose support from that. When we have rural schools that are being overwhelmed by non-English language learners who just don't have the resources. Not that they don't love these kids. It's not that they don't want the best for these kids. It's not that they don't want to try to make a place for these kids to achieve the American dream. It's that they literally don't have the resources to take care of this, and then that starts to deteriorate the opportunities for everyone in those schools. And so there has to be an orderly way to do this. We have to be able to set limitations. I'm glad that this conversation is really picking up. I saw, there was a headline in The Economist, a very left-leaning news organization, about how to fix the global refugee system, because travel has gotten so cheap and so easy and information is so freely available. We just can't have millions of people pouring in here without any regulation. I will also just say this, Ben. I think as I talk to Utahns, most Utahns, and I think if you look at the polling that's out there as well, people don't hate immigration, and they don't hate immigrants, but they want it to be orderly and thoughtful, and it just has not been. They certainly don't want criminals coming in here, and we've seen too much of that as well, and that's where the backlash comes from. And so I think instead of, I think what they favor more than just mass deportations, especially of people who have been living here for 30 or 40 years and have raised their families here, I think what they want is an Ellis Island where it's orderly, where we set limits, where we decide as a country, Congress decides or the states decide how many people we're going to let in and for what purposes, and then we follow through with it. If we had a system like that, immigration would be a non-issue today.
Is there anything the state can or should do to prevent more tragedies like the No Kings protest?
Well, look, I don't know that there's more that we can do. We work very closely with organizations across the state, including No Kings. That was an absolute tragedy. I can tell you that they were warned months and months and months ago that it was a bad idea to have these peacekeepers to be a part of what they were attempting to do, and that it could lead to something tragic like this, and sadly it did. What we do is we follow the law. I've said before, that peaceful protesting is a protected right under the Constitution, and we will protect that right. But any type of property damage or harm to individuals is unacceptable. We work very closely with local police departments. We meet with organizations as much as possible to help them plan for their protests in ways that will protect the people that are there protesting, as well as the citizens of the state. And sometimes tragedies happen, and this is one of those, unfortunately.
Who was warned, and by whom?
The leaders of the event were warned many months ago when they first started doing this, and they were warned by our Department of Public Safety.
When you say when they first started doing this, were those at previous protests where there were also armed security?
Yes.
And what was the conversation at the time? Was there a conversation about changing that in the future?
No, that was the conversation.
Who should be responsible?
Our DPS said it's a bad idea. You can do it. It's not illegal. There's nothing illegal about it. It's just a bad idea. And they said, well, we think it's a good idea. End of conversation.
There's 26 states across the U.S. that have bans on long guns, rifles, or AR-style, rifles that at protests or state capitals. Is that something that you think the state should consider? I'm
a big believer in the Second Amendment. I don't think it's something that we should consider, but I hope people will just be smart and responsible.
And who's responsible for Afa Alu's death?
That's a good question, and the district attorney will eventually make that decision as it goes forward. Again, a lot of good people who made mistakes, and it's a tragedy. I don't know who's ultimately responsible, but I think a lot of people are responsible for what happened, and it's a terrible tragedy. My heart goes out to his family. I think again, mistakes were made by the organizers, by the peacekeepers, by the protester who brought his rifle. Lots of mistakes were made.
We're going to wrap on this. this. Thank you, Governor.
Yeah, I'll just end with this. I want to thank all of you. We're heading into another celebration, 24th of July, one of my favorite celebrations. Utah is a very special place, and I'm grateful that we get an opportunity to celebrate it together. I would just ask everybody to please celebrate responsibly, especially when it comes to fireworks with the drought that we're having and the fire danger that is out there. Have a great time, and happy Pioneer Day. Thanks, everyone.